Maya Hernandez sat at the defense table, her back straight, hands neatly folded in front of her, yet an unmistakable tension ran beneath the surface. The fluorescent lights of the courtroom glared down, casting long shadows across the polished wooden benches. Jurors shifted in their seats, eyes flicking between her, the prosecutor, and the gallery. A low hum of anticipation filled the room, punctuated by the occasional rustle of papers or the quiet tap of a gavel. Her attorneys had prepared their opening carefully, presenting her as a mother who had left her kids just for a procedure. A brief absence that, in their framing, carried no malice. But every eye in the room seemed to question that claim. The air hung heavy with doubt. Did she really intend any harm? Could a simple moment of absence spiral into tragedy? Maya's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the intensity surrounding her. Her fingers drummed lightly on the table, a subconscious rhythm betraying her nerves. The jury watched her expressions closely, each subtle exhale, the way her eyes scanned the courtroom, and the faint crease forming between her brows. Around her, the courtroom's architecture, a semicircular jury box, rows of spectators, and the judge's elevated bench, reinforced the weight of authority and scrutiny pressing down. From the gallery, the murmurs of observers mixed with the careful note-taking of court reporters. Every detail mattered. The tilt of her head, the way she shifted in her chair, the occasional glance toward the gallery. In this room, where every gesture could tip perception, the stakes were clear. One misstep, one flinch, could sway the jury's judgment. This was not just a courtroom. It was the crucible where truth, perception, and consequence would collide. And as Maya Hernandez faced the gaze of those deciding her fate, the tension was almost tangible, an unspoken question hanging in the air. What really happened during those brief moments she left her children behind?
The union of act and intent, and it's found in Cal Crim, and it's this. The offenses in this case require proof of the union or joint operation of act and wrongful intent. What that means is that you've got to have a guilty act and a guilty mind at the same time, okay? Guilty act and a guilty mind at the same time. If I'm standing here in front of you today, and I'm thinking about...
The courtroom fell into a tense silence as the prosecution approached the witness stand. Maya Hernandez's eyes flicked briefly toward the jury before settling on the polished surface of the defense table. The question that hung in the air was simple, yet loaded with consequence. Why had she left her children alone, even briefly, for a medical procedure? Ms. Hernandez, the prosecutor began, voice steady but sharp, can you explain the exact timeline of that day? Maya swallowed, her calm exterior wavering for a fraction of a second. She recounted her morning with rehearsed precision, the hours leading up to the procedure, and her assurances that the children were safe. But as her voice carried across the room, subtle inconsistencies began to emerge. Small gaps in memory, shifts in phrasing, moments when her gaze darted nervously. The prosecution didn't pause. They pressed further, producing a 911 recording, the frantic voice of a neighbor capturing the immediate chaos that unfolded while Maya was away. The tape crackled through the courtroom speakers, the words stark and undeniable. Children in distress, emergency responders en route, and the tense urgency of a moment no parent could anticipate. Maya's attorneys leaned forward, whispering guidance, yet the damage was already seeping through. Jurors exchanged glances, absorbing the discord between her testimony and the recorded events. Questions lingered. What had truly occurred in those unseen minutes? What had she not witnessed, or perhaps, what had she overlooked? Even as Maya maintained her composure, a shadow of doubt had been cast. The courtroom itself seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting for the next revelation. Every word, every pause, built toward a realization. This was more than a procedural absence. Something significant, something hidden, had happened while she was away, and the timeline, once thought straightforward, was now under scrutiny. March 14, 2025, Miami, Florida. The morning sunlight spilled across the suburban streets, illuminating the quiet routine of the Hernandez household. Inside, Maya Hernandez prepared for a brief medical procedure, a commitment she insisted would take only an hour. Her two children, ages 5 and 8, were in the living room, absorbed in cartoons and toys spread across the soft carpet. Maya checked the locks on the doors, reminded the kids of the rules, and left detailed instructions for what they could and couldn't do while she was away. The backyard pool was off limits, the cabinet secured, and phones left within reach in case of emergency. Everything appeared orderly, a mother's attempt to control the environment in a brief absence. Yet subtle cracks began to form. A window left slightly ajar, a toy not returned to its place, a phone charging in another room, small, almost imperceptible details that would later take on monumental significance. The children's innocent chatter masked the tension that would erupt minutes later, the calm before the storm. As Maya drove away, the camera pans back to the house, emphasizing the isolation. Time, measured in minutes, became critical. What seemed like a routine departure now carried the weight of unseen consequences. Every step, every decision she made in that brief window would be examined under the relentless scrutiny of investigators and the courtroom. Inside, the children continued their morning, unaware of the chain of events about to unfold. The air held a quiet tension, a sense that normalcy was fragile, that a single misstep, or a moment of inattention, could have devastating consequences. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecution called its first witness, a neighbor who had observed the Hernandez children that morning. Their testimony painted a chilling picture, a routine day disrupted in mere minutes while Maya Hernandez was away for her procedure. Every word was measured, precise, echoing through the tense room. Jurors leaned forward, notebooks ready, trying to reconcile the mother's brief absence with the unfolding tragedy. 911 calls were played next, the audio crackling through the speakers. A panicked voice reporting the children unresponsive, another relaying the frantic attempts of first responders racing against time. The dispatcher's calm instructions contrasted sharply with the terror in the calls, emphasizing how quickly a normal morning had turned catastrophic. Emergency personnel arrived within minutes, entering the house and assessing the scene. Their movements were swift but meticulous, documenting each detail. Doors left unlocked, a phone found in another room, the living room scattered with toys and objects out of place. The children were rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital, paramedics working desperately to stabilize them, but the severity of the incident was immediately apparent. Prosecutors highlighted the timeline, meticulously reconstructing each minute Maya had been away, overlaying it with verified evidence from the scene and emergency records. The jury could see it. The hours seemed normal on the clock, but the consequences of that short window were devastating. Each testimony, each call, reinforced the narrative that Maya's temporary absence had allowed events to spiral beyond control. By the end of the testimony, it was clear the courtroom's anchor, the timeline, was not just a series of minutes. It was the key to exposing the truth. The evidence did not merely recount what happened. It revealed how quickly circumstances could turn tragic, and how the seemingly mundane decisions of a mother could be scrutinized under the harsh light of justice. The courtroom lights seemed to dim as the prosecution presented the findings from the Miami Police Department's thorough investigation. Officers had reconstructed the timeline down to each crucial minute. Surveillance footage from a nearby security camera showed the street outside Maya Hernandez's home in sharp clarity. Every movement was accounted for, neighbors coming and going, children playing in the yard, and the brief window when Maya left for her procedure. Jurors watched, captivated, as the ordinary morning was dissected into a sequence of meticulously verified facts. Detectives testified about their interviews with neighbors, nannies, and first responders. Statements were consistent, each one reinforcing the others. One neighbor recalled seeing a fleeting shadow near the living room window just moments before the emergency call, while the nanny recounted a brief interaction over the phone, verifying that the children were alone but seemed fine at the time. The prosecution emphasized these small but critical details, weaving a narrative that tied the timeline to the eventual tragedy. Physical evidence was presented next. Police photographs captured the living room and kitchen, showing doors unlocked, toys scattered, and minor hazards overlooked. Details that, though subtle, contributed to the broader picture of what transpired during Maya's absence. The emergency call timestamps were displayed, correlating precisely with hospital intake records, proving that the sequence of events had been rapid, yet entirely traceable. During cross-examination, the defense challenged the interpretation of these findings. They questioned the reliability of eyewitness accounts and suggested that surveillance footage could be misread. But each objection was countered with corroborated statements and the objective data captured by first responders. The jurors were left to weigh not only the physical evidence but also the consistency of the investigative record, a meticulous compilation of what happened when Maya left and how the consequences unfolded. By the end of this segment, the narrative was clear. The combination of interviews, surveillance, and verifiable timestamps created a compelling account of events. The courtroom had transformed from a place of speculation into a stage where facts spoke louder than words, and every detail, no matter how minor, was part of the story that justice would consider. The courtroom held its collective breath as the first witness was called to the stand. A neighbor, visibly shaken, recounted the moment she saw Maya Hernandez leave the house that morning. Her voice trembled as she described seeing the children at play and then the sudden escalation of events. Jurors leaned forward, eyes fixed, hanging on every detail. Every subtle gesture, the witness clutching the podium, glancing at Maya, added weight to the testimony. Next came the child witness, whose account was brief but chilling. The young voice described seeing small incidents that, in hindsight, foreshadowed the tragedy. Each answer was carefully recorded and played back in the courtroom, punctuating the tension. Maya's attorney objected repeatedly, questioning the reliability of a child's memory, suggesting imagination and misperception might distort events. Yet the prosecution highlighted consistency across multiple statements, drawing nods from the jury as they connected the dots. Medical staff provided expert testimony next. Nurses and first responders described the condition of the children upon arrival and the rapid actions taken to save them. Their detailed accounts, from initial vitals to emergency procedures, painted a vivid picture of urgency and care. Every pause in their testimony, every hesitant glance toward the jury, reinforced the gravity of the situation. The defense attempted to minimize Maya's role, framing her absence as brief and without intent to harm. They argued that minor oversights could not equate to negligence. Jurors exchanged glances, weighing the arguments silently, while the judge maintained a firm but attentive presence. Between testimonies, courtroom tension thickened. Every shifting weight, whispered consultation, and tightened jaw reflected the stakes. Maya remained calm externally, but subtle hand movements and the tightening of her grip on the defense table betrayed inner unease. The evidence, combined with the human witnesses' accounts, transformed the abstract into a palpable narrative, leaving the jury to confront the stark consequences of that morning. The courtroom fell silent as Dr. Elena Martinez, a pediatric medical examiner, took the stand. She presented her findings with meticulous precision, explaining the extent and nature of the injuries sustained by the children during Maya Hernandez's absence. Diagrams and photographs were displayed on the court monitors, highlighting bruising patterns, minor abrasions, and subtle indications of delayed emergency response. Each detail reinforced the timeline of events, validating the prosecution's reconstruction. Jurors absorbed the information, their expressions shifting between disbelief and concern as the gravity of the injuries became undeniable. Next, child psychologists and social workers provided context for the child witnesses' statements. Dr. Samuel Green explained the methods used to ensure credibility, emphasizing that children, when questioned appropriately, could provide accurate and reliable accounts, even in highly stressful situations. He described signs of trauma observed in the children and the lasting psychological effects that could distort memory if not carefully documented. His testimony was precise, often punctuated by courtroom nods as the jury absorbed the scientific validation of what had been observed firsthand. Social worker reports supplemented this, detailing prior interactions with the family, noting the children's routines, and confirming that their recollections were consistent with known behaviors and environmental factors. These reports were read aloud, then entered into evidence, creating a mosaic of corroborated facts. The defense attempted to challenge the experts, questioning methodology and potential bias. Cross-examinations focused on the nuances of trauma, memory reliability, and whether minor errors in recollection could skew conclusions. However, the prosecution reinforced the validity of their findings, guiding jurors to connect the expert testimony directly to the events of that fateful morning. Throughout, the courtroom's attention never wavered. Jurors scribbled notes, exchanged subtle glances, and reacted silently to each revelation. The combination of hard medical data and psychological analysis solidified the narrative. Maya Hernandez's absence was not simply a lapse but a pivotal factor in a sequence of events the jury could not ignore. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Maya Hernandez's defense attorney, Richard Callahan, rose to present their strongest arguments. Calm, measured, he painted Maya as a devoted mother who had stepped away briefly for a necessary medical procedure, emphasizing her intent to return quickly. He described her prior conduct, routine care, attentive supervision, and documented involvement in the children's lives. She never intended harm, Callahan asserted, eyes sweeping the jury. This was a momentary absence, not a decision that endangered her children. The prosecution countered immediately, rising with assertive urgency. Assistant District Attorney Linda Reyes outlined the timeline with precision. Maya left the home at 8:42 a.m., The neighbor observed unusual activity by 8:50 a.m., and emergency services were called at 9:05 a.m. Every detail contradicted the defense narrative. She displayed security footage, highlighting Maya's absence alongside movements inside the house that suggested the children were unsupervised longer than claimed. Witness statements reinforced the prosecution's case. Neighbors described hearing unusual noises, seeing doors left unlocked, and noticing signs of distress in the children prior to Maya's return. Callahan attempted to undermine credibility, questioning memory reliability and emphasizing external stressors. But Reyes skillfully navigated these challenges, pointing to corroborated evidence, timestamps, phone records, and 911 recordings. The courtroom was silent, save for the occasional scribble of jurors taking notes. Each exchange ratcheted the tension higher. Short, impactful sentences from both sides created a rhythm, an unspoken battle of precision versus narrative. The jury could sense the stakes. The defense sought to explain, the prosecution aimed to expose. By the end of the session, the contrast was clear. Maya's intentions were debated, but the sequence of verified events, the timeline, physical evidence, and witness testimony, loomed large. Every point made by the defense was weighed against cold, hard facts. The showdown left the jury staring at the reality that decisions in those crucial minutes had consequences beyond speculation. The courtroom grew tense as the judge excused the jury to begin deliberations. Murmurs faded, leaving only the steady hum of the air conditioning and the quiet shuffle of papers. Family members gripped each other's hands tightly, eyes fixed on the door through which the jurors had just passed. Every heartbeat seemed amplified in the silent anticipation. Inside the jury room, the atmosphere was thick with gravity. Jurors pored over exhibits, Maya Hernandez's statements, the neighbor's 911 call, surveillance footage, and the reconstructed timeline of the morning. Every detail was weighed, every word scrutinized. Some jurors whispered, debating the plausibility of Maya's defense that she had left her children just for a procedure. Others focused on the physical evidence, the unlocked doors, the moments of unsupervised time, the sequence of events captured on video. Back in the courtroom, the gallery remained still, the audience sensing the critical turning point approaching. Family members fought to maintain composure. Some quietly wept, others stared straight ahead, the tension etched on their faces. Reporters tapped notes furiously, knowing the verdict would define the story for days to come. Hours stretched, and the jurors returned to the evidence repeatedly, revisiting testimony and cross-examinations. Questions about intent, negligence, and timeline inconsistencies dominated their discussion. The emotional weight of the children's suffering was palpable, hanging over every deliberation. Finally, after careful consideration, the foreperson signaled readiness. Courtroom doors opened, and the jurors filed back in, faces solemn. Silence fell once more. The judge's gavel echoed through the room, commanding attention. Every eye was on Maya Hernandez, whose calm demeanor now showed a subtle tension. The moment of truth had arrived. The collective anticipation of family, attorneys, and the audience converged, bracing for the verdict that would decide fate and deliver long-awaited answers. The courtroom was silent as Judge Marquez called the court to order. Every eye tracked Maya Hernandez as she sat at the defense table, hands folded tightly, the tension in her shoulders betraying a calm she had tried to maintain. The jurors rose and handed the verdict form to the clerk. The room held its collective breath. "Will the clerk please read the verdict?" the judge instructed. The clerk's voice was steady but carried the weight of finality. In the case of the Commonwealth of Florida versus Maya Hernandez, on count 1, child neglect resulting in death, the jury finds the defendant guilty. On count 2, reckless endangerment, the jury finds the defendant guilty. A shiver ran through the courtroom. Family members gasped, some clutching each other, others dropping to their knees quietly weeping. Maya's face paled, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes fixed on the floor. Reporters scrambled to capture every expression, the flash of cameras punctuating the solemnity of the moment. Judge Marquez addressed the court. Motherhood is not merely the act of giving life. It carries the responsibility to protect, to nurture, and to provide safety and love. Today, the evidence has shown that these children were left vulnerable, and the defendant failed in her duty to safeguard them. The loss suffered by this family is irreparable, and accountability must be upheld. Turning to Maya, the judge continued, "The sentence reflects the severity of your actions. You are hereby sentenced to 2 concurrent terms of 30 years in the Florida Department of Corrections, with eligibility for review under state law after 25 years. This court finds no mitigating circumstances sufficient to reduce the sentence. As the gavel struck, Maya's shoulders slumped. Family members embraced, tears flowing freely, a mix of grief and relief filling the room. The prosecution nodded quietly, aware that justice had been formally recognized. Defense attorneys conferred in low tones, acknowledging the outcome. Outside the courtroom, supporters and journalists waited, cameras capturing the final moments of a case that had gripped the community. Weeks after the verdict, Maya Hernandez remains incarcerated at the Florida Correctional Institution for Women, serving the sentences imposed by Judge Marquez. Her appeal options were limited by the guilty verdict, though legal representatives have filed motions to review procedural matters. Prison officials report that she has been enrolled in mental health programs, but visitation is strictly monitored. For the families of the victims, the days following the trial are a mixture of grief and cautious healing. Relatives continue to honor the memory of the children, holding private ceremonies and establishing small foundations in their names to raise awareness about child safety and parental responsibility. Community members, still shaken by the events, have organized support groups for families affected by child neglect and domestic tragedies. Child welfare experts and legal analysts continue to reflect on the case. Dr. Linda Morales, a pediatric psychologist, notes, "The Hernandez case highlights the fragile balance between parental intention and responsibility. Even brief lapses can have catastrophic consequences, and the legal system must carefully weigh evidence when evaluating intent versus negligence." Public reaction remains intense, with local news coverage prompting discussions on the obligations of caregivers and the warning signs of domestic risk factors. Meanwhile, prosecutors emphasize the importance of timely reporting and community vigilance. "We hope this case reminds everyone that prevention starts with awareness," said State Attorney Jorge Ramirez. Media coverage continues to show courtroom footage, surveillance, and 911 recordings, reinforcing the narrative that factual evidence guided the verdict. For Maya Hernandez, life in prison now defines her daily reality, a permanent consequence of decisions that resulted in irreversible loss. For the families and the community, the legal conclusion offers some closure, though the emotional scars remain. The children's legacy lives on in the lessons learned, the discussions initiated, and the policies reconsidered in Florida regarding child protection.